You can't avoid investing. We're all investors whether we like it or not. Even if you just hold US dollars in your bank account, that's still one asset that you're holding to the exclusion of other assets you could be holding. And the US dollar might move up against the yuan or down against Bitcoin or down against gold, up against, I don't know, grain or whatever. And so, if you just stick to the path of least resistance and hold on to what most people hold on to, then you're going to do about average in terms of the performance of your portfolio. And that means you are guaranteed, therefore, to actually lose wealth over time, because investors are not distributed normally. It's not a bell curve in terms of performance. It's a Pareto distribution, which means the top 20% of investors gain 80% of the growth in the market, which means your purchasing power relative to others is constantly diminishing if you just stick to that path of least resistance. You're guaranteed to lose your wealth. So you don't want to hold on to your national currency. You want to allot your time, energy, and wealth into investments, assets, activities that you project will give you some kind of gain on your investment. If you don't gain, then you lose relative to those who are gaining. And you'd like it not to be the case, right? You'd like just to be able to live out in the woods and, I don't know, be a subsistence farmer or whatever. If you're a nation of subsistence farmers, though, and another nation rises up economically and builds an industrial economy, then they can wipe you out easily. They can kill you, because relative to their power, your power is minimal. And that relative power is what matters in this world. Even if you just live in the United States and you hold on to your land and you think that, well, I'll give this land to my kids and I'll have my little enclave and we'll be safe, we'll be okay. Not really, because if that elite investor class gets interested in the assets that you're holding, because they hold power in the market, they can gain power in media, they can gain power over the laws in your area, and they can make life more and more difficult for you and eventually push you off your land. So the point is, if you want to stay in the game, you have to do something. You have to be active. You can't just stick with the herd. It feels safe to stick with the herd, but the way this financial system is engineered is like a herd of lemmings, where every so often there will be a currency collapse, and the top investors will be able to then swoop in and buy up all those dollars or other currencies now that it's at a minimum, and then with that value, purchase up all of the actual tangible goods and infrastructure in a nation. That's basically what happened to Germany in the 1920s. And it's happened before in many places. It's happened in the United States before. Depressions generally benefit the people at the top. They engineered the system this way to an extent. So sticking with the herd is a way to guarantee that you're going off the cliff eventually. You should assign your investments according to the best information you have that allows you to project the probabilities of gain or loss in various asset classes. The best and easiest analogy is to horse races. If you want to bet effectively on a horse race, you don't go all in on one horse that you get a good feeling about. You get the best information that you possibly can that allows you to project the probabilities of success of the various horses better than the house does. If your information is better and your probabilities are more accurate, then you will eventually gain, provided that you allot your bets proportional to your projections of performance of the various horses. And in the wider economy, the house is popular opinion. That's like market demand overall, I guess you would say. So if you have better information than the average investor and you allot your investments according to that information you have, then you won't be in that middle. You'll be up towards the top. You'll stay in the game. So if some of you think you have better information about the state of affairs than the average person, but you're not actually allotting your investments to correspond to that information that you have, then there's really no point in having the information, is there? It's like Jesus says, those who hear and don't do are worse off than those who never heard. If you get this saving message, you get a warning about some kind of collapse, you get a heads up about the banking system, then you better do something about it. Because you don't want to just throw your life away. You don't want to throw the future of your children, the future of your community away. You don't just want to be stomped underfoot by the elite because you're lazy, because you don't want to allot your investments according to the information that you have. So, what do? Well, what I've done is I've bought land and I'm trying to work it. I'm trying to do something that will allow me to move forward, not on my own, but with others. And this isn't the last piece of land that I'm going to be buying. I have big plans, and I'm going to keep on investing my energy, and people who have my same view, my same projections about the future, will be working with me, and we will invest and put our energies together and try to get a return and try to get something that will last. There's really no point in being wealthy if you're by yourself, because eventually you'll die and then that's it. Where does your wealth go? You can't take it with you. If you have a family, then great. Your family can inherit that wealth. But if your kids are being raised by the mainstream society, they're getting the information that the elites want them to have, and the elites have an interest in giving people the information that renders them useful cattle, right? If your kids are getting their information from the mainstream, they are being gradually roped into the system of parasitism and predation that the elites benefit from. And so they will siphon off your wealth, not to you directly, perhaps, if you're a good investor, but from your children, if you pass it on to them. So it's not enough to have a family. If you have a community, then you can control the information that your children get because they can learn from the community. It takes a community to build a worldview, to build up a perception of market probabilities. You have to have sources of knowledge that are pretty wide, right? No one person can do it on their own. Or even if one person can't, the odds are that their kids won't be able to do the same. You can have lone savant geniuses who perform exceptionally well, but it's not a long-term sustainable strategy because geniuses don't always beget geniuses indefinitely. You need a community that builds up a knowledge base and transmits it within the community to allow the community collectively to continue investing in the interest of that community. It's the only way to survive. If you're by yourself, if you're just your own family, you're not going to last in this economic paradigm. You will be wiped out eventually. So, is that the way it has to be? If you want to invest well, are you going to have to exploit others? Put others under your own foot? No, because this paradigm is not the only possible paradigm. There are fundamentally, metaphysically speaking, two kinds of hierarchies in existence: parasitical hierarchies and competence hierarchies. A better word might be, I don't know, truth hierarchies or wisdom hierarchies. Parasitical hierarchies allow for cooperation through mutual greed. This is the logic of capitalism, basically. We work together, and I obey my boss because it's profitable for me. But when it stops being profitable for me, then I bow out. Or if it's profitable for me to wipe someone else's wealth out, then I do it under that paradigm. And you have people, homo lupus homini est. Man is a wolf to man in that situation. And no one's really happy, because wealth doesn't make you happy. Community does. Love of others, understanding, feeling understood, all of that stuff. A competence hierarchy, a wisdom hierarchy, where cooperation is on the basis of a shared conception of the good, where we can all build together something that's going to last for the community for ages, that doesn't necessarily benefit one person disproportionately. We all get together and we build a massive monument, or we build, a huge stone living center, right? That's going to stand the test of time, and it'll provide apartments for our descendants into the ages, right? You could build these massive things that last a very long time. You could build infrastructure for your community collectively. It could be done. It is done in some countries to an extent. But every community falls more or less into one of these two camps: more predatory, parasitical, or more truth-oriented and cooperative on the basis of a concept of the common good. So, if you want the world to move in the direction of the common good, you need a kind of organization that is not worldly, but is oriented towards that which is higher, right? That's the principle of heavenly hierarchies. Everyone looks towards God, which is the source of good. We're all trying to get closer to God. And if we all just look towards God, then we can behave in a way that allows us all mutually to get closer to God, because it's not a finite resource. We can all get there. But where people are looking away from God and towards the matter that they can possess, then that's a parasitical, demonic hierarchy. If you want your world to move towards the good, then you have to invest. You have to work. If you are given talents, you have to do something with them. You can't just bury them in the sand. If you're given information, you can't just do nothing with it. If the word falls upon your ears, but you don't act, then, you will be subsumed within a demonic hierarchy. There's no way of avoiding it. So you don't want to be cattle. You don't want to be parasited off of. You don't want to be stomped underfoot, weeping and gnashing your teeth. You want to work together with people that you love to get to a better future for all of us. We could arrange things that way. My own thought about how, the direction we should be aiming is replacing this global system of neoliberal capitalism with a global system of distributivism, where people are once and for all given the tools, the real physical tools they need to provide for themselves, and then we facilitate the spread of information to allow people to preserve the environment, which they'll have an interest in doing if they have a stake in it. If they each have 1 acre to do with, to make the most out of, they're not going to just rape it and then pass it on to their kids worthless. Like some will, but the incentive will be to maintain it, to make the most out of it, to make where you are a better place. And charitable organizations and educational institutions will have an interest in spreading the knowledge that facilitates whole ecologies and whole ecosystems growing in abundance, prosperity, health. It's all about incentives. If the incentive is for a billionaire to come in and gain a monopoly over certain vital resources to jack up prices, then they can start siphoning off wealth from a community, and they don't care what happens to that community. It's their farm, it's their cattle, and they can just pick all of that up. They're transient, right? They can go all over the world and take wealth wherever they find it. That's the incentive in neoliberal global capitalism. We can't have it long term unless you want what we have, because, like I said, investors, just competence generally, in terms of, I know I said competence hierarchy before, I was trying to come up with a good word, but it's really just the angelic hierarchy oriented towards truth versus demonic hierarchy oriented towards self and individual gain. But competence in general is Pareto distributed. So if you allow capitalism, you're getting a system where the top 20% will keep on expanding and everyone else will constantly be pushed down. And, no one stays on the top forever. That's why Satan is legion. He's not one metaphysical personality in the way that there is one perfect personality to God, the most perfect personality. There's no one, person that is Satan. There's a principle, a way of behaving that is satanic. And the reason that makes sense is that if there was one person, Satan, eternally, well, then he could reap the benefits eternally and never pay the price for the suffering that he causes. But it's not just one person. There's a cycling, a fall and a rise, and through the whole thing. But anyway, that's the fate of you and your world if you don't cooperate with others seeking the good, trying to understand how you can improve your situation globally. Concretely, that means talking to others. That means trying to cooperate, because we are getting close. We're getting down to the wire where the holders of the vast majority of the wealth in this world are able to shut down whole economies. They're able to control the information flows. They have the capacity to literally just lock down whole countries in the name of whatever threat they suggest is worth locking down those countries. They can control behavior to an increasing extent. You can't escape it on your own. There's nowhere to escape to. It's a global system of control that is constantly creeping. Where are you going to go? What are your kids going to do? What kind of world are you going to leave to your children? You have to cooperate. And to do that, like, what does a competence hierarchy look like where you're all oriented towards the good? Well, it's not selfish, and that's why it's able to form in the first place. A hierarchy is hierarchical, means there's leaders and followers. So how does that happen? A boss is your leader because it's in your self-interest. So how do you have a leader if it's not obviously in your self-interest? You believe in what they say. You think they're speaking the truth. So who's speaking the truth? You have to determine that. Seek the truth, and you will find it. Seek God, which is truth, ultimately, metaphysically speaking. Seek God, and everything else will follow. And concretely, that means you seek the people who have the truth. You seek the books that have the truth, sure, but you can read all the books in the world in your basement alone, and you'll still be subsumed in a demonic hierarchy. You can receive the word, you can have faith even, but still be convicted by your own sin because you didn't actually do anything with the information that you gained. We're all investors. We all have our talents, and we have to put them to use. So what are you doing? Thank you for listening.